Well, guys, welcome to Giant Chat. With me today, I have Joe Auger. He was on the Proclamation fan video. And I think, Frank, I didn't invite you. You must have just stayed online till we came on again, I think. Anyway, I'm just joking with you. Anyway, it's good to see you, Frank.
Good to see you.
Yeah, and Christian Toma. He's a Gentle Giant fan, guitar player, and I'd like to get to know you a little bit. We've talked a couple of times, but you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of your journey to find out about Gentle Giant?
Yeah, so Gentle Giant and prog rock started for me about 3-4 years ago. And I found King Crimson randomly one day, and I was like, this is pretty cool stuff, you know? And I just fell down that rabbit hole of prog rock. I went from King Crimson to Genesis to Yes and all those bands. And I eventually found Gentle Giant. I actually started with Acquiring the Taste, which was not an easy album for me to get into at
bold.
first, but the opening of Pantagruel's Nativity just like it kind of scared me at first. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So that was the first album that I really fell in love with by them. And from that album, I ventured on. And right now, my favorite album by them is Interview. So I don't know.
Well,
good choice.
He jumped in at the deep end, didn't he? Anyway, Joe, we've chatted a couple times, but this show is going to be, I'm not going to know everybody, but we're just going to get a chance to know each other, and then we're going to jump into some talk about Gentle Giant, and it can go anywhere, progressive rock, music that turns you on. But Joe, how in the world did you were one of the lucky few that got in on the video, and you sang vocals, and how much notice did you have? I mean, had you done any Gentle Giant covers or anything like that before that? Or
No. I mean, I am a musician, and and all that, but Gentle Giant obviously is, as you all know, pretty complex musically, and I'm not I'm not that level of player. Like, I'm not that tier at all. I'm a kind of a songwriter busker, and I can play a few handy notes here or there and make it sound pretty good, but otherwise, I don't remember the exact timeline. I mean, other than, especially, that was 2020, right? It was like May of 2020, I believe it was.
Yeah.
When that happened. And I think I know my mind was scrambled at the time, but I just remember seeing the notice somewhere, either Instagram or Facebook or something, and I thought, oh, what a cool idea for everybody that's like languishing in their houses right now. And I knew, it's like, yeah, okay, I knew I wouldn't be able to play an instrument to any real worth, and potentially make the cut, but I knew I could sing. So having never sung that song, though, I just sort of learned it as quick, as best as I could, and that was a lot of fun. And learned the backing vocals as well, and downloaded it, made the stems in Logic in my system, and just did what I could to make it sound as good as I could, and somehow made the cut. Yeah, I was dead chuffed about that, for sure.
Well, I think you sounded great, but you look like you've been doing it for a long time. You've done, you do some podcasting on your, I think, Facebook Live and different things. So you play guitar and things like that. So that wasn't too much out of your range, but still, I thought you look like you've been doing it all the time. I thought. So,
well, yeah. I mean, yeah. No, I mean, I've been a musician for 40 all my life. Practicing to trying to make money at it for 45 years. Have I made money at it? No, but I keep doing it.
Sure.
So yeah, and singing, I think, in general, my voice is the thing that's like that's my instrument. So I appreciate that, though. Thank you. I can kind of pick things up, thankfully, melodically pretty quickly. And so talk about, like, Gentle Giant scaring you at the first, in your first listening. Like, I remember my first Gentle Giant listen was Three Friends. I had much the same reaction as you did. I mean, I think I might have been a little older than you at the time, but it was, and and I was a prog person to that up to that point. Tull, Genesis, all those folks that I had grown up with. And Gentle Giant, I came very late to them for some reason. I don't know why. There was something about them that I was a little scared of, And I listened to it and I went, ooh, I just didn't hit me right away. Like I didn't absorb it, And then I much later down the road got Playing the Fool, and then I got it.
Hmm.
I somehow got it, and that album just sort of like, oh, I get where they're coming from, and I understand it now. And I was like, holy crap, are they good? And then proceeded to listen from there. So they inform for sure. Just especially melodically, it's so rich and complex, and it's fun to sing. Like the
Right.
moments I can find in a car to sing along with them is a challenging thing.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, that was, I tell you, that video for me was a game changer. It just, I had tears in my eyes when I saw it. And I'd known a couple of the guys
Yeah.
From Facebook, from the Gentle Giant group, and then to see them on there, I still can't. I want to watch that together tonight. I want to watch part of
sure.
that together
That'd
tonight.
be great. Yeah.
I think that would be a good thing for us to do. But
Mhm.
Frank, I was just giving you a little hard time there, but it's good to see you again.
Yeah, me too.
He's
I need to comment on Christian and Joe's first listens to Christian acquiring the taste. My first was Octopus, which is of course very accessible. Three Friends is too, but it still wasn't quite Gentle Giant yet. I since we had the chat a couple weeks ago, I went back and kind of revisited. And if I would have bought the debut or acquiring the taste, I probably would not have gone forward.
Mhm.
It was just, I mean, we can talk about those later at some other time, but it was interesting. And Christian, that was brave.
I didn't know what I was getting into at that point.
Yeah.
Let me ask you,
It
Christian.
sure opened up a world to you, didn't it?
Oh my God.
So, Christian, let me ask you. I have no idea your age.
I'm 15.
Oh,
15.
man.
But
Turned 16 in May.
okay.
He's the only one without glasses. He's the only young one here.
Well, I tell you, so what got you into music? I mean, what got you into, you play the guitar, what else do you play?
I've been drumming since my dad's a drummer, and my mom played piano in our house since we were pretty little. So music has been in our family since we were babies. So I've just mainly gravitated towards music as like, oh, this is something to do for fun, and just exploring on the piano was something I would do. But yeah, with my dad being a drummer, I was pretty like I had easy access to a drum set when I was little. So I would drum along to like Beatles. The Beatles were my first band that I would get into. So I remember drumming to Sgt. Pepper when I was like 5.
Great wit, man. That's the best. I mean, if you're gonna learn from the best, that's where to start.
Rango. Oh yeah.
Yep.
And then just from there, I didn't really dive into music. Like I didn't take music as seriously up until I was about like 12 or 13. And I started getting into some of those, more underground bands. And then that led me here eventually. So I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
You play guitar also though? I mean, the drums is a primary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you playing in a band now?
I don't have a band that I play with, but at the music camp, the Three of a Perfect Pair music camp, I have a group of people that I normally play with there.
Are you doing progressive or?
Yeah, mainly.
Oh, cool.
Very nice. Got to get the new generation, saddled up.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Well, I tell you, you have somebody that's kind of in your corner, Christian. You want to talk about him a little bit? somebody that in the band.
Gary.
Yeah.
Oh
cool.
yeah.
Mm.
So through the music camp, the first year I went 2 years ago, someone noticed my freehand shirt, and he's like, I'm pretty good friends with Gary. Why don't we get a Zoom call with you set together? And I was like, that sounds fantastic. I would
That's
absolutely love
cool.
that.
That's cool.
And so we're talking on the Zoom, and he says, where do you guys live? We're like, oh, middle of Iowa. And he's like, why don't we have some coffee on the way back? Because you're right on our way.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
like, that's great. So we sat down. He gave me this hat and this interview
Really?
post,
Oh man.
Oh, wow. Sweet, man.
which is, I can't believe, original promo for interview, which is awesome. I think it's the poster they used in like the interview music videos, the ones where they did interview and give it back, and I lost my head. It kind of shows that poster at the beginning.
Wow.
And he also gave me Scraping the Barrel, which is a lot of fun listening to.
I bet.
So
Yeah, that's a fun
this
box.
year when we went to camp, we also talked to him again. It's really nice. He's a really like sweet guy.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, what a way to get your start. And I get the feeling that, you know, he probably sees something in you. I assume. So that's pretty cool. So I guess one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about was, you know, here progressive rock. I think one of the things we mentioned in the last show was, and Greg Bendian talked about it too. He said there's music that stays around and people appreciate it more over the years. There's so much that gets played, and I mean, Christian is growing up where anybody can put out any music of any quality as much as they want now. You don't have say a record studio, or you don't have to buy time. You don't have to qualify. You can just put out whatever it is. And I think if you like write any music or want to publish any music, you're going to be swimming through a sea of, to get heard is hard.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a challenge in that way. But progressive rock and the music of Gentle Giant, it keeps getting new fans, and it's something that stays. Why do you think progressive rock? Let's ask you, Joe. Why do you think progressive rock kind of has that staying power where people grow an appreciation of it, or maybe many times years back they blew it off, and then they are beginning to see that, hey, that wasn't actually too bad. What do you think it is about progressive rock that does that? Gentle Giant's music also.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was, I was thinking about that in my show I was doing earlier tonight, and you know, uh, with Gentle Giant, I think we all know, they were just 10 years, and then we're done, and that's it. Literally, just like a real finite kind of time span. And at the time, they weren't as popular as all of their compatriots of the same time, the ELPs, the Genesis. They didn't make those transitions the same way. They were sort of always just sort of under the radar. And then for years before YouTube, for those of us that are a bit older, we didn't grow up with YouTube. And these days, though, I can't think of my life without it. Whereas, Christian is like, you've never not had it. And so I think as far as the staying power goes, progressive rock, it's like a treasure trove of just notes, of music, of concepts, of ideas, of just the way music can work and move and be constructed and emotive, and and not every music genre has all of those pieces or those boxes to tick, you know what I mean? And for me, it's like, all of those bands that we kind of mention in that same handful of, again, Genesis, Tull, Crimson, all of the big yeses and LPs, and then you have the second tiers of like Van de Graaff Generator, and you have I mean, the Beatles were progressive, from Rubber Soul on, really. Procol Harum. I mean, there's so many. And like, you know, I envy your journey is that you have so much to discover. You
Yeah.
know, I kind of say to myself, I always say to myself is like, I can't wait until I get older and completely lose my memory so that I can rediscover all of this stuff all over again.
Yeah.
I'm going to make lists for my nurses to play this stuff for me so that, oh, I remember that, you know.
Well, there's three of us who wish we had a time machine, though. I mean, man, would we go
Right?
back and
Yeah.
see Gentle Giant live? I'd be
Yeah. I mean, it was,
hitchhiking to go
yeah.
see him.
There was just a little bit, you know, I mean, in 1980, I mean, I was only 15, I was 15 in 1980, you know, when they were done. So
Yeah.
they weren't on my radar anywhere near, like during their time. I didn't discover them until I think, again, that first album was, it was the early 90s. Right. So, like I knew of them, but again, I was afraid of them. I didn't, but, as far as the staying power of all these bands and like the fact, like people like, Tull are putting out tons of music all of a sudden again, and it's actually pretty good, and it's just like, you know, and Fripp is still doing his thing, and like all of these acts, or most of these acts, you know, the ones that are still surviving, are there's just something about their I don't know, the way that they make music and the way that they look at it that is just not, it's missing from today's music.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's the way that it's made, or like you had mentioned, about, you know, in the 70s it was a different ball game as far as the record business was concerned. It's like you know, you were given the golden ticket if you got lucky, and it was a lot
Mhm.
of luck. I think the irony though of this day and age with the way technology is going, as much as there's a lot more to wade through and a lot harder to probably get heard, on the other hand, I'm talking to you fellas on this thing from all corners,
Yeah.
right? And like, you know, I can do my radio show, and I got some guy from Crispin Glover Records one night, and in Sweden at 3 o'clock in the morning, he was still working, and he had me on in the background. And that's all I ever wanted. Like when I was 15, I wanted to be a radio DJ, and I can kind of do it now.
Mhm.
It's amazing. So I think that it's finding the niche of your time, and especially with your music coming up, like, you know, do whatever you can do to get it out there, because oddly you can get it to more people than ever before. However, yeah, it's a lot more crowded. So
Mhm.
I think, but it's still a tall question. Like, I don't know. I don't think I answered the question. Do you know what I mean? Because it's
Well,
so, it's such an ephemeral thing, prog rock,
mhm.
you know?
I don't think we any of us really know, but you know, Frank has been listening to Gentle Giant. I mean, gosh, I got to say, they've only got 10 albums. They've got a
Right.
very limited live performances on video, and yet here he is. I mean, still listening to it today. I have Gentle Giant going through my head,
Wow.
but Gentle Giant has a staying power, and
Mhm.
I would have to say, I want you to talk to this, Frank, but you're finding something new in songs that you've heard 100 times by them, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't notice that. What do you think that Gentle Giant's staying power is attested to, Frank?
Uh, it's almost like fine art. You look at it, Monet or something like that. You can keep looking at it and keep looking at it, and you keep finding new things in it. And you can always go back and look at it and enjoy it. Pop music, there's like ditties, and ditties are fine and they last for a bit. And you can always go back and listen to some pop tune. The 60s, of course, was riddled with them. But you get tired of it.
Yeah.
And, Joe, you said the 70s, it was just a time. I remember hearing Led Zeppelin, the first album, and it was like, nobody's doing this.
Yeah.
Nobody's done this before. The first Black Sabbath album. And I consider these progressive, not necessarily in term progressive rock,
Mhm.
but progressive is something that moves forward. You look at classical composers. Stravinsky was progressive because he was taking it to another place.
Mhm.
A lot of people didn't like it. The long hairs didn't like it, but with Gentle Giant, one, they were all so talented, just amazing musicians. They worked well together. The writing was, it's complex. It was interesting, but it also wasn't so complex that it scared you, except for maybe acquiring taste. But you listen to, say, like Freehand, it rocks. But if you really listen to it, it's like jazz. Jazz, like bebop or whatever, you don't just kick it back and just kind of put it on. You got to listen to it. Mm-hmm. Or bluegrass, the same type of thing. There's a lot going on. And you have bands like, yes, ELP. I saw ELP a lot. I only got to see Yes once later on, and I was disappointed. But these bands were, the talent was just immense. And I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Well,
as Pete Carter would say, I got the olds.
No, you know something? I think you might have answered the question about like why prog rock, stands the test of time. It's like you said. It's like you have to interact with it. Like listen, that's a good point. Right? I'm a child. Listen, I'm the same way. I'm a child of a certain time period. My first musical experience was the Monkees and the Beatles. Okay, they were my gateway drugs. And if you listen to their deep catalogs, they have aspects of everything that we're talking about, like from the pop ditties, but they also have deeper things like progressive, like especially on Nesmith's terms, certain progressive things that they were doing. Anyway. So, but that's what it comes down to. I think that's why this music lasts, especially something like Gentle Giant. Every single one of those albums is like you said, it's like a painting. Like you can't put that music on in the background and wash your dishes. You know what I mean? I mean, at least I can't. I don't know. Yeah. Because if I do, I end up stopping and but I think that might be the question. That's what answers it. You got to. An album like Close to the Edge. It's like I can't. Whenever I have to, like, if I play that album, like it's like if I'm in my car, I have to know that the journey that I'm taking is at least 50 minutes.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So I need to listen
to the whole thing.
Yeah. Right? It's like I can't break up albums like that. Like any of my favorite progressive rock records. If I know I'm going to listen to it, okay, do I have an hour? Do I have 2 hours if it's a double album or whatever? You know what I mean? Like I and I don't know if that's just an OCD thing or something, but it's like you said, I think that's part of it. And I think just the musicianship, the melodic, especially for me, like melodicism is key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even if the melodies are amazingly complex, like Gentle Giants are, and sometimes even, really jagged and angular, and then you have someone like Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. His is a little more mellifluous and more sort of traditionally melodic, if that makes sense. But nonetheless inspiring and amazing to my ears as far as that goes. And I think with Gentle Giant, I think there's a weird, I think the thing that I noticed about them is also there's this humbleness about them.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like that, like a band like Yes does not have, or King Crimson for that matter. Like they know, like, you know what I mean? Like, so a lot of those bands, it's like, yes, I am Robert Fripp of King Crimson. What are you going to do about it? I mean, like that's sort of the attitude.
Yeah.
With those guys, with the Gentle Giant guys, I just get this feeling, and they even said it. It's like they weren't into drugs. They were all about, they would have a pint, like they had a very, I don't know, very utilitarian, everyman thing about them, but yet they played this amazing shit.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
I think that, like, after all this time, that's the one thing, at least that I notice every time, especially if I see them live footage of them, is that they're just like, they just kind of just come across and they're just doing their thing and they're not putting on airs, Yeah.
You touched upon something saying their ability to inspire. Something I wanted to ask you, Christian, was And I know it sounds like you haven't fully caught the music bug, but yet you're really into it. I mean, it's something that makes your life better. But still, do you think that progressive rock, the music like Gentle Giant, like Yes, we were just talking about Close to the Edge, one of my favorite albums of all time. Do you think that there's something special about progressive rock that inspires musicians as opposed to other kinds? I mean, does it make you want to go write or play more than other kinds?
100%. And one of the main reasons that Gentle Giant does that for me more than say like King Crimson or ELP is that when you watch live videos of Gentle Giant, they all look like they're having like the best time of their lives
Yes,
playing.
yes, yes.
Like if you
totally.
watch King Crimson, Robert Fripp's just sitting there on his guitar, like,
Yeah,
They're
look
serious.
like,
they look a little miserable. Yeah,
yeah, like they're very talented, but they're not like exciting to watch. And like Robert Fripp can be like a very exciting guitarist, but he's not exciting to watch. And watching Gentle Giant play just like makes you want to get up and do something with your instrument. There's something inspiring about seeing how those band members react to each other.
Have you tried your hand at, I mean, bits and pieces of their songs? I mean,
Yeah, it's tough, but it's fun.
yeah. Okay. So what?
Especially as a drummer, I think it must be fun to play along, in John Weathers fashion. To yeah,
Got to make the faces too.
Got to make the faces.
What do you think of the comparison of the three drummers, Christian? What do you think? Martin Smith, Malcolm Mortimer, and John Weathers.
I mean, yeah, I think, well, John Weathers is my favorite because he was more of like a funk rock drummer, and he really threw a wrench into their sound when Octopus came around. Like the debut to Three Friends is more like almost chamber music-esque. And then come Octopus and In a Glass House, there was all of a sudden a very, very hard edge to their sound. And I think John Weathers played a very, very big part in that. Like you have Martin Smith playing, like, why not on the debut is still like a rocker, but there's some like contemporary classical things that he's doing on the drum set. And on Three Friends, it's more of like a laid back kind of rock sound. But with Octopus and then Glass House, it's like funk. And that, really changed their sound.
I tell you what, we're going to take a break here. What we're going to do is we're going to join the other meeting.
Go to the next meeting.
All right. So if you need to, all right, we'll see you in a few.
All right.
All right. All right. And there we're back. So anyway, we were kind of going down the road of what made progressive rock kind of special, and why do you think it wasn't well received? I'd heard that sometimes they would put somebody, record studios would want to get some albums selling, and they would go, I think that guy has something, and give him a contract or whatever. And progressive rock obviously did not click with some people, and there was an attitude against it. And so here's Gentle Giant. They had started their career kind of in that environment. They had been in Simon Dupree, and they had another record that they were contracted to make, but instead of going another Simon Dupree, they went the other direction. I think because I'd heard they were seeing what Frank Zappa was doing and Spirit was doing, Wishbone Ash and things like that. But progressive rock, just it never, some people just go ugh with it. And other people like us, it really connects with. I mean, what do you think makes that happen with somebody? They just, for me, it was, I'd grown up listening to classical music. And here was something that incorporated that, things I was familiar with. But Joe, what do you think? Why do you think it clicked with some people and other people didn't.
Yeah. I obviously I was a toddler at the time, and when at the start of the advent of the 70s, but in looking back at interviews and looking back at press and looking back at kind of the how the culture was, well, either progressing or regressing, however you want to look at it. Um, I got the sense that I think some people, like I think critics, or music writers, um, some of at the time, I just don't think that they just didn't have the information or didn't care. And I think that I mean, Zappa said it best. It's like writing about music is like dancing about architecture, or some paraphrasing kind of thing like that. And you're absolutely right, because obviously Zappa fell under those wheels very often, and ironically, Gentle Giant was one of his favorite bands, so you do the math of that as well.
He didn't
So
have many.
no, right? There was very few people that he looked up to in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, that's high praise, right? I think though, so I think a lot of times, mainly because I see it these days, and not much changes really, to be honest. Like if I see something happening in the culture that suddenly is like, the press sort of are all over it to be negative about it, or to kind of create a negative thing about it, and that was happening in those days as well. It was the music was pretentious, or it was
Yeah.
overthought, or it was whatever the going cliche at the time in the music press was. You read about the I think it was Chris Welch, right, who basically trashed Tull's Passion Play album, right? And you read that now and you kind of go, it's like, what was his problem that day? You know what I mean? It had almost nothing to do with the music. If you read that review, because it's not that far away from Thick as a Brick. So, you know what I mean? It didn't make, those kinds of things never made sense to me when you read them now, 45, 50 years later, and you kind of go, and then you see like current or newer, like reviews of, say, like a remaster or one of the remixes or something like that, and the praise is high, high level praise. It's like, well, okay, well, what changed in 50 years? Nothing. Other than the fact that, guess what? 50 years later, we're still talking about this music. And other of the music of that time that somehow had more cachet because it was more street or whatever, or punk or true or whatever, whatever again, are we talking about? Some of it we are, maybe, but not all of it. A lot of it just like went bye-bye.
Yeah.
And we're going to say the same thing about a lot of the music that we're hearing nowadays, a lot of the new music. So
it goes bye.
yeah, no, I mean, it just goes in one ear out the other, and not in a good way. um, um, yeah, so I don't know. I think a lot of the, like, as far as the people buying the music, possibly put too much, I don't know, weight on some of those critiques and some of that music press garbage.
Yeah.
In lieu of making up their own minds. Go out and buy the record. If you don't like it, well, you don't like it. However, especially with progressive rock, like, we've all had that moment of like buying certain records, me with Three Friends or whatever, which now I think of Three Friends as, I mean, that's in my top 3 of Gentle Giant now. You know what I mean? So like, do the math. And the same thing with Passion Play. I first heard that album. That was like, I don't want to say it was my first Tull listen, but it was my first Tull album, full listen. Same thing. It's just like, I didn't get it at first. It was very, very complex music to me until it got to the point where that one day I listened to it, and then one day I went, oh, this is good.
Oh,
Right? And it is my favorite record of Tull, So
me too.
right? And it's like, I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's kind of a toss up between Thick as a Brick and Passion Play. It's like the yin and yang of things, Thick as a Brick is that crazy joyful record, and Passion Play is a little more circumspect and all that kind of stuff. But
I never got into Thick as a Brick.
oh, that's interesting. Really? Wow.
Okay. I tried. It's like Genesis. I could care less about Genesis. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're, I don't. It's not that I don't like them. It's that they don't do anything for me.
Yeah.
And Thick as a Brick did the same thing. Passion Play. But then I love Passion Play is my favorite. Topographic Oceans is my favorite. I love Patrick Moraz's Story of I.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I love the long stuff.
Yeah.
I love something that takes me from one place to the other. And then people may trash the Harry Loss of Spectacles. Hey, that's fine. And it's well written.
Yeah, it is. And I think
instrumentally and
and it's whimsical and it's very English, obviously.
Yeah, very.
And I think I think a lot of progressive rock, because a large percentage of it, is based sort of in a Euro English,
right.
a Euro centric kind of thing. So yeah, I think some people also looked at it as very white. If we want to get into that, it's like
that's true.
There were aspects of it that were not funky. It wasn't Motown, and it wasn't Parliament P Funk or whatever. Despite John Weathers clearly being funky as a drummer, I think that those are all claims made to the music that it was just unfair. It's like, well, it's not Motown. Of course, it's not going to be the same kind of feel. So one is apples, one is oranges, and I think you can't consume music that way. I can listen to a Motown record and then put on Passion Play right next to each other and be equally amazed, fascinated, and moved. I think some people who potentially don't have that kind of flexibility with how they listen to music, and I unfortunately think that's a lot of present company accepted, of course, a lot of young folks don't have that flexibility, it seems. I think you're lucky that you have grown up in a household that clearly music was a driving force, and like a kind of like a pet in the house. You know what I mean? Like that's just there and it's always there, and you have that dialogue with your family, which is huge.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Christian, what do your friends think of the hat when they see it? I mean, do they ask?
Some of them do. I've gotten one of my friends really into prog as a whole. Not so much Gentle Giant, but just prog, and I'm very happy about that because every time I show him new music, he's not like, "This is dumb," "This is too long." So it's nice to have someone to talk to about that. And but yeah, he likes the hat. I guess he thinks it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, you got to kind of pull them kicking and screaming into the prog world.
Come on, you better listen to Topographic Oceans.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I had a funny experience when I was in the Army band. I think it was at the School of Music, and I had seen Mahavishnu Orchestra open for ELP in Long Beach.
Oh my God!
Well, I was there to see ELP, and here's this band with a guy with a double neck guitar, short hair, and just doing this weird stuff. And I wasn't paying attention, and my drummer buddies, he says, "You got to listen to his albums." He was a jazzer from the Valley. And I said, I finally he sits me down. We partake of some rolled up stuff, and it was like, oh, it was. And then of course that opened the fusion to me, and then Chick Corea came along and was Return to Forever.
Oh my God, yeah, Return to Forever is great.
That first album, Hymn to the is it Hymn to the Seventh Galaxy? The first one. It's just it's mind blowing.
Yeah,
I've got it here somewhere.
My favorite Return to Forever album is Where Have I Known You Before? Probably.
Oh, really?
Or that, or Romantic Warrior are just great. The production on those two albums are fantastic.
Well, Romantic Warrior is Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, yeah. Romantic Warrior is kind of like Yes, It's Close to the Edge or ELP's Brain Salad Surgery. It's like everything everything is happening right.
Yeah.
And the production on Romantic Warrior is just
Next
incredible.
level.
I wonder, do they have that in the 5.1 or that'd be kind
Hope
of fun.
so.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if those records have been given that treatment yet. And actually, I had a question about that. You know, we talking about how we find new things. Have you? What are your feelings? All of you. Like, what are your feelings on the remixes of the Gentle Giant stuff, or just any of the 5.1s of any of the prog stuff like that Stephen Wilson has been doing?
The only one
What? Say that again. What?
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. The
Mine's
only
negative.
Oh, really?
The only one I got from Stephen Wilson is The Power and the Glory. I think it's good. But when I normally throw this in, I listen to the original mix that's included. I feel like Stephen Wilson mixes a lot, like pretty quietly. So some of the things that I really like in the original mix are kind of pushed down.
They're not there. Yeah.
And he brings up some of the things that you're not really hearing, which is like fine, I guess. But the original mix for at least The Power and the Glory, I think, is far superior than the Stephen Wilson remix.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't mess with it. You know,
Mhm.
don't colorize Citizen Kane. Clean it up. You know, let's get a cleaner print, but don't colorize it. And the hype over Stephen Wilson to me is too much.
Mhm.
There are albums. For instance, one of my favorite albums in bands is Fire Ballet.
Oh yeah.
And the first album, Night on Bald Mountain, was not a very well-produced album or well recorded, engineered. The remasters are much better. And in fact, the second album, 2-2, which got really poo-pooed when it came out, especially that horrible cover. But the remaster, not remix, but the remaster, it just, you go, okay, this is still a great band.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I have The Power and the Glory, and exactly that. You just go, wait, why is it way back there? Why did he put it in the back of the bus? You know?
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to have a show where we have some people talking about some of the remixes. I also want to have a show where some of the people that their thoughts on Unburied Treasure, their new live box set, front row center. Sorry, I'd like to hear some about that. But Christian, you've got. What do you think? I wanted to ask you because you've got a different perspective. The great period of music in my eyes was just behind me. Just, I was like in my mom's tummy when Acquiring the Taste was just hit the record stores. So I missed it by a little bit. All right. But during that time, there were people like, you think about the members of Gentle Giant coming together. There were other bands. You think about the odds of like Pete Townsend and Keith Moon and Entwistle and Roger Daltrey coming together. That was happening all the time. There were bands that were coming out when Led Zeppelin hit, everybody just was like, what in the world is that?
Mm-hmm.
Where did these people come from? But it was like stars were aligning back then.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's going to be really great music come out during your time? Because some of us are wondering. We see a lot of stuff come out, but do you think we're going to see groups like that come together?
I definitely do. There are two bands that I absolutely love right now that one of them released my favorite album of like the decade a couple years ago, and the other one is just like a great prog band. Black Midi and Black Country New Road are my two, like, look at these bands now for the modern era. They, I guess they're prog. Black Country New Road is more of like chamberish kind of, but they just create some beautiful music. And Black MIDI on Prog Archives, they're under the Rio category, so they're pretty deep in prog, I think. But their last album, Hellfire, is just fantastic. A lot of cool prog stuff going on in there.
Well, I certainly hope you continue down the road you're going on. I think, you know, you're at a time where you have the opportunity to do something that, like Gentle Giant, they could have had so many more things go their way and probably would have changed their course.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that's another show. But they did what they did, and you know, we love them for it. I would like to go around the room. I've already heard Frank's version of this, but favorite albums by Gentle Giant. Christian, go ahead and start.
All right. I have to pull out Acquiring Taste. That's the album that got me into them, you know. Let me think. Freehand, definitely has to go on there. Big like rocker for them. I think after The Power and the Glory, which is more like complex, proggy, like time signature wise, like cogs and stuff on there. This is more of like a refresher for them, I feel. Just getting back to like that rock root. Interview, of course, with it being my favorite from them right now. This is, I think, the band at their tightest, you know, rhythmically, you know, they're all playing off of each other, the counterpoint. And I think this album is tied for my favorite, if you could call it an album. Playing the Fool is the greatest live album ever recorded for me.
Indeed.
It is.
Indeed. Yeah.
It is so freaking good.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe?
I mean, I tell you what, you know, we're on the same page, my friend. Yeah, my favorite as well. And it actually took a while. Same thing. It took interview. First listen, not really. Second or third listen, about the fourth listen, I went, oh, yep, that's my favorite record. That's my favorite Gentle Giant. Number two, like I had mentioned before, was Three Friends as far as studio, and then my other top three, because it was the thing that made me click, is the live album, Playing the Fool. Yeah, that live album is, you know, it's woefully underrated as far as live albums go, in the pantheon of great live albums. You know, you know, the fact that, like, as far as I know, they didn't do a heck of a lot of sweetening after the fact. Like, you know what I mean? Like a lot of folks do with live albums, going back in the studio. And
I think Gary Green may have had to.
Yeah, there's, like, from what I had heard,
it wasn't in the mix or something.
Yeah, so, you know, like, I think other than like fixing maybe some technical issues,
yeah,
and, you know, maybe a bum note here or there, but for the most part, what you're hearing is what they played.
Yeah.
And,
well,
you know,
the thing is when I saw him twice.
Yeah.
And the first time I had a headache from smiling. You know.
What was the first? What was that tour, or what was the album?
The first one was in 75, so it was probably Freehand.
Yeah, it was that would be Freehand, right? Yeah.
Santa Monica Civic, and then in 77 I saw him at the Shrine with Renaissance. They were back and forth headlining. Actually,
here's an interesting note. Well, I know we're into Sunday morning at this point, but as of yesterday was the anniversary of a Massachusetts show on that tour, Renaissance and Gentle Giant somewhere in Massachusetts. I figured, but I haven't noticed that somewhere up online recently.
It's a great tour. So I got a quick question for you guys. So you mentioned, you know, I'm backwards, but there's three great live prog albums that I believe. There's Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Welcome Back, My Friends. Of course, Yes Songs, and yeah. So I'm just kind of curious how you would rank those. I'm a little partial to this because I was actually at that concert.
Yeah, right.
No
Wow.
It was, yeah. I didn't find out about it until I got the Rhino release of brainchild surgery. And I went, oh, cool.
Right.
Hmm.
I can tell you that. So, for me, there's a, it's a certain, it's a nostalgia thing for me. So, in high school, Yes was one of the, the first kind of groupings of prog bands that I was, immersing myself in. And that live three album set live album was listened to often, very late at night with help. I'm gonna
Yeah.
say, do you know what I'm
I-
saying? The kind of help
yeah.
we're talking about, yeah,
Uh-huh.
that kind of help. That's another. If we're talking live albums, I mean, it's another one that's, I think, probably woefully underrated. Unfortunately, because of the press and their attitude and their kind of, I think it kind of gets subsumed under the sort of weight of the Yes culture, shall we say? A great record, and just the idea of that three album monster,
Yeah.
was awesome. And then that ELP. It's funny, that ELP live record I'm not as familiar with, oddly enough. I had that other single record version. It had like the picture of the Montreal stadium.
Oh, yeah.
You know the one I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I can't think of the name right now, but yeah.
Is it like Works Live or something, I think?
Something.
Oh, yes, it is. I
Is
think
that
it
what that
is.
is? Yeah. And that and Pictures at an Exhibition is another
Oh, yeah.
another favorite of mine for sure.
Yeah.
As far as live records goes, yeah.
That had to have been an interesting concert.
Yeah.
Because that was I think their first public appearance
Something like that.
Isle of Wight or something. And
Well,
those
they did.
people had to-
If I remember correctly, they did Isle of Wight, and then they did that not long after, and that was like the second album they released after the studio record, which was odd. Apparently, the record company said, "What are you doing releasing this? It's your second album. It's the live album. What are you doing?" And it's a classical record. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like all of the things wrong that supposedly a record company is not going to allow you to do that they did.
Yeah.
And it's one of those albums that's just so audacious, that you can't ignore it.
You mean Keith Emerson was audacious?
Yeah, really.
On the Emerson, Lake and Powell tour, I never did see ELP proper, but which I thought that was it was a pretty good tour. Anyway, somehow in Providence, and I was able, the day of the show, to get front row tickets. I don't know how the hell that happened. It's never happened again. And during the moment where he takes that old organ that he would stab to death, I mean, one of those moments you just never forget. It's like just oh my God! It's just like unreal to see that live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, one band that you wouldn't get excited about their live albums, even though I listened to them a lot, and I bought them because it had so many of their songs on it, and it usually had Neil's drum solo, was Exit Stage Left, All the World's a Stage, and that's what, Show of Hands. I can't remember.
Show of
Anyway,
Hands, yeah.
I liked Show of Hands better. There was a lot more energy to it, but I saw Rush 6 times,
Wow.
and that was my gateway to prog. A lot of people don't really even call them prog. I don't care about the label so much, but those albums were special to me at the time. But I can say, from seeing them 6 different times, to be honest with you, by about the 5th one, I was a little bit bored with seeing them. It was a long concert, but they played it by the book. And you contrast that with, I love Rush, believe me. I loved them a lot more before they got really popular. And I'm gonna leave it at that. Anyway, but contrast that with Playing the Fool.
Yeah.
You feel like you're there at a concert, and they're having fun and you're having fun. You don't know what they're going to do next, and it's not a carbon copy of what's on the album.
Some of it is, because
Well,
you want to hear it, but
Yeah.
they don't like ELP. They were pretty much carbon copy, but that's how they recorded it so that they could perform it.
Mhm.
You know, Gentle Giant did do overdubbing, but so there were things that they couldn't do in concert. You know,
let me say this, and I don't want to cut the show short, but I am running up against time limit, and here's what's going to happen. I would like to have a lot more of these,
Mhm.
and I would like to have some repeat guys. Maybe you, any one of you. Of course, I've enjoyed having you on, Frank, because you know Gentle Giant. I like having you there to pick up where I don't know as much. I just love the band, but I'd like to have this more. I like the discussion, and I think it brings something new. And I think I want to bring some people. Like I said, I'm not going to say who it is, but I've got some people that have got some inside stories about some different things. Plus, I'd like to eventually get some. I've got a wish list. Let's put it that way. But I tell you what, let's round out the last few minutes. I want to play a few minutes of. Let me see. I want to play a few minutes of the Proclamation fan video.
You may not have all you want, all you need, all that you have has been due to my
there
hand.
it is.
It can change,
Anthony, yeah.
it can stay the same. Who can say? Who can make the claim? The situation we are in at this time, neither a good one, nor is it so unblessed. It can change.
Hello, I am
Oh,
Pedro. You'll have to edit
What's
this
the
in.
best?
oh wow.
Ads.
Oh, there goes Max Headroom again.
That's
Oh,
right.
God. Oh no. Oh, no.
Oh man.
That's funny.
Anyway, I'm gonna get some better gear. But anyway, that video.
Putting that video together had to have been a
Oh
nightmare.
my God.
Yeah, I can only.
You know,
Now here's the thing. I don't remember that like when they first put this out that like there was any inkling that the band themselves were going to be in it. If I remember
all of them
correctly,
were.
right? And every single one. So the minute like that shot when Derek came up, I went woohoo, you know. And then later on, it's like
When they do the hail and they're all
yeah,
there.
but there was just this moment where like I'm right, my shot is right next to Derek's shot.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, talk about bucket list stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy. That's
That was.
crazy.
I'd say.
That was such a huge thrill. Tell you what.
Did you get to? Was anybody there with you when that came out, and watching it with you?
No. I you know, all on my own with me and my cat at the time. You know, I mean,
What did your cat think?
at the time the cat was just sort of looking at me funny as normal, you know. But you know, I shared it with friends, and you know, they were you know, happy to see that. But these are all folks like, you know, they're not Gentle Giant fans. They, you know, they did they're supporters of mine, but they didn't understand. It's like, look, you have no idea. This wasn't like that. That is a highlight for me, a life highlight for me.
Well, me seeing it myself, not being in it, it was a highlight for me. We've got to kind of end the show today, but Christian, thank you so much. Maybe I wouldn't mind having you on again sometime. Talk more about, talk more about Gentle Giant music and your thoughts. Joe, thank you so much. Frank,
Anytime.
I'll have you again. Okay, guys.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Good
It's been
night.
Giant Chat. Thanks, guys.
Oh yeah.
Nice meeting you guys.
Good night.
Yep.
All right.
Bye bye.
Good night.